Yo soy. Yo soy. Él es. Él es. Ellas son. Ellas son. Ellas son poderosas. Ellas son poderosas. Tú eres. Tú eres. Tú eres bombero. Tú eres bombero. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? Nosotros estamos. Nosotros estamos. Nosotros estamos tristes. Nosotros estamos tristes. Las animadoras están. Las animadoras están. Las animadoras están en el gimnasio. Las animadoras están en el gimnasio. En la lección número 9 te voy a explicar unos verbos que son muy importantes. Los verbos que se llaman ser y estar. In Lesson 9, I get to teach you about two of the most important verbs in all of Spanish, ser and estar. Now, ser and estar have similar yet different meanings. And so despite their similarities, it's really important for you to be able to differentiate between the two and properly use ser when ser is needed and be able to properly use estar when estar is needed. So I'm going to help you learn when to use ser and when to use estar. It's kind of like if you're at a restaurant and you're looking at the entrees on the menu and you're having a hard time deciding between the Salisbury steak or the meatloaf. Or like if you're looking at the desserts and you're having a hard time choosing between the lava cake or the creme brulee. Fortunately, unlike this restaurant example, with ser and estar, you have some very clear guidelines for when to use each verb. So I'm going to make those really clear to you. With that said, let's get started with ser and estar. Here's the learning outline. First, some vocabulary, followed by an explanation of what I call the vague Spanish verbs. Then we'll look at the meaning of ser and, of course, the meaning of estar, and when and how to use each verb, followed by a quiz. I'll show you some pitfalls that are common for new students, and a speaking practice, and finally some comprehension. Here's the vocabulary. Remember to say these words right along with me out loud. Estoy. Estoy. Soy. Soy. Now these two words, they have very similar meanings, almost identical meanings. So I'm not going to get into these details just yet, but I want you to notice that their translations into English are nearly identical. Tú eres. Tú eres. Tú estás. Tú estás. La escuela. La escuela. Simpático or simpática. El estadio. El estadio. Dispuestas. Dispuestas. Roto or rota. Enfermo. Enfermo or enferma. Enferma. Bombero. Bombero or bombera. Bombera. Marinero. marinero, soldado, soldado. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? Soy policía. Soy policía. Nosotras somos poderosas. Nosotras somos poderosas. Ellas están estudiando esta noche. Ellas están estudiando esta noche. Él es mi hermano. Él es mi hermano. We've talked a lot about verbs up to this point, and for the most part, the verbs we've dealt with fit that standard verb definition of action words that are easy to visualize, meaning you can picture them in your mind. Like it's easy to visualize somebody running, or a dog jumping, or a child studying or reading, or somebody writing a letter. These are all verbs that are easy to visualize. Now, there is a subset of verbs that I like to call the vague Spanish verbs. And these are just as important, if not more important, than the regular concrete verbs that we've talked about. To run, to eat, to study, to open, to close, to jump, to drive. Okay? Now, these vague Spanish verbs are actually extremely, extremely common, and they are some of the most useful verbs in all of Spanish. Let me show you a few examples. The first vague Spanish verb is the verb to have. That's right. A lot of times we don't think of having something as being a verb. But when I say a statement like, I have a dog, or I have a car, that's actually using that subject, verb, object formula. Another example is the verb haber, which also means to have or to exist. Another example is deber, to owe or to have an obligation to do something. Ir is the verb to go. It's a very common verb, but a lot of people don't recognize to go as a verb. Hacer means to make or to do. And poder means to be able to do something or to have the power to do something. So you can see that these examples here, these are a little bit harder. They're a little bit more difficult to visualize in your mind. Somebody having something, or something existing, or to have an obligation to do something. Now I'm going to show you two more vague Spanish verbs, which just so happen to be the subject of Lesson 9, okay? Ser and estar. Both of these verbs mean to be, but they have slightly different uses, meaning we use them in different situations. And so it's my job to help you understand when to use ser and when to use estar. But a lot of people look at these verbs and they think, gosh, I didn't even know that to be was a verb. And what's an example of to be in English? I'm glad you asked, because we're going to look at that right now. Again, ser and estar both mean to be. And here are some examples of how we use the verb to be in English. First, I am, you are, she is, we are, it is, you all are, and they are. These are all examples of how the verb to be is used in English. Let's complete these statements. I am ready to go. We are taking a test. It is 3 o'clock. They are sick. The chair is broken. You are studying and she is smart. Think about all the times during the day when you use statements like this, when you're using these words like am, are, and is. These are perfect examples of where we use the verb to be in English. Now let's talk about the different uses of the two verbs. So these are the situations in which you would use one verb instead of the other. So let's first start with ser. Ser means to be, and there are 4 uses of the verb ser. The first one is to explain or to describe characteristics. Next is to explain or describe origin or possession. Number 3 is to describe the location of events. And number 4 is to tell or to communicate time of day. All right. If you have trouble remembering these, just remember this acronym COLT. All right. Now let's look at estar. And don't worry, we will look at examples of each of these next. Okay. Estar has 2 principal uses. First of all, to explain or describe the state or condition of something. Second of all, to describe the location of everything except events. So ser, we describe the location of events. With estar, we describe the location of everything else, just not events. And again, remember colt on the ser side, and on estar, remember sli. All right, now let's look at some examples using ser. This table shows you each of the 4 uses and one example with the translation into English. So let's say these together in Spanish. The first one is for characteristics. Yo soy obediente. Say this with me. Yo soy obediente. I am obedient. That's a characteristic. Origin or possession. Soy de California. Say that with me. Soy de California. I am from California. And soy in these 2 first examples are the example of ser. Okay, that's the yo form in the present tense of ser. Next, the location of events. Say this with me. La fiesta es en el edificio. La fiesta es en el edificio. The party is in the building. Okay, the party is an event, so you use ser, and ser conjugates into es. Okay, la fiesta es. Finally, telling time. Son las 8. To tell time, you use the verb ser. It's as simple as that. So you say son las 8. It's 8. It's 8 o'clock. Son las 8. All right, and I've also provided you the translation of ser in the present tense above in yellow. Now let's look at some examples with estar. Remember, the first use of estar is to describe the state or condition of something. So here are 2 examples. Yo estoy cansado. Say that with me. Yo estoy cansado. I am tired. Estoy is that translation of it's the estar conjugation in the yo form in the present tense. So yo estoy cansado. Next, la silla está rota. The chair is broken. Say that with me. La silla está rota. The chair is broken. Okay, this is the state or condition of something. A lot of people look at the state or condition as being something that's temporary, that could change in a moment's notice. And generally, that's a good guideline to think about it as. So I could be tired right now, but I might take a 5-minute nap and I might feel refreshed and energized, and I'm no longer tired. The chair could be broken, but with a little bit of glue or some duct tape, we could fix it up, and it might be fixed in just a few minutes. Okay, so the state or condition of something is usually a trait that can change pretty easily. Okay, it can change. So you could be happy one moment, and then you could get some bad news, and you could become sad. That would be a state or a condition. Let's look at the next use, location of everything except events. So if it's not an event, you will use estar. So forget about like parties, sporting events, meetings that you might have. Okay, all of that is ser, because those are all events. This is the location of everything except events. So like usually it's objects. La pelota está en el coche. Say that with me. La pelota está en el coche. The ball is in the car. Okay, está is the conjugated verb of estar in the present tense. Next, el matador está en la plaza de toros. El matador está en la plaza de toros. The bullfighter is in the arena. Okay? Now, the area where a lot of people get tripped up is this state or condition use, because a lot of times they get it confused with the first use of ser, which is around characteristics. Okay, and I'm going to talk more about this in just a moment, but I wanted to point that out in case you're a little bit confused at this point. I thought it would be helpful to just kind of say like, hey, I understand this is a point of confusion, and we're going to cover more of this in just a moment. All right, so before we go any further, I just want to give you a few unofficial quiz questions. Okay, so here's the first one. Can you give me the verb ser or estar? You don't have to conjugate it. Just tell me, would this statement require ser or estar? Okay, ella blank enferma. Enferma means physically sick. Okay, so you could be physically sick, and are you going to use ser or estar? Essentially, the question you're asking yourself here is this a characteristic or is it a condition? Okay, those are the two uses you're having to decide between. And I will tell you now, I'm going to give this one away. Being sick, physically sick, is a condition. Okay, it's something that you have now. You're feeling bad now. You're sick. You're not feeling well. But maybe you take a nap, or maybe you get some water, maybe you go outside and breathe some fresh air, and suddenly you're not feeling quite so sick anymore. So it's a state or condition that can change fairly quickly. Okay, so you're going to use estar in this example. Here is the next question. Nosotros blank jugadores de fútbol. Nosotros blank jugadores de fútbol. Okay, jugadores de fútbol means soccer players. So this is saying we blank soccer players. Are you going to use ser or estar? And I'm going to talk you through this one as well. This one is essentially trying to understand, okay, how do you communicate what you are? Like if you are a banker, or if you are a project manager in your career, or maybe you're a gardener, or maybe you are a basketball coach. Okay, how do you tell somebody what you are? This is a prime example of the verb ser because it falls under that heading of characteristic. Okay, the key thing to remember here is that a characteristic is something that is not likely to change very easily. Okay, so if you are a soccer player, it's likely that you've been a soccer player for quite a while. And you've trained and you've spent time and energy and effort getting better at becoming a soccer player, such that you identify yourself as a soccer player. Likewise, if you are studying a field of expertise and you hope to someday become a professional in that same field, this is a characteristic about yourself that is not likely to change. So if you were to say like, I'm a doctor, yo soy médico, okay, you are a doctor. That's part of who you are, and it's not just going to change from moment to moment like the above example of being sick. Okay, so that's the best I can do at explaining the difference between a condition and a characteristic. A characteristic is more permanent. Here's the next example. El partido blank en el estadio. El partido blank en el estadio. All right, this one you're essentially having to ask yourself, is a game, el partido, is it an event? And if it is an event, then we're going to use the verb that you use to communicate the location of events, which is ser. And this one's easy. A game, of course, is an event, so we're going to use ser. El partido es en el estadio. And finally, ellos blank simpáticos. Ellos blank simpáticos. Simpáticos means nice. Okay, so they are nice. That's essentially what we're saying here. You have to ask yourself, is being nice, is it a characteristic or is it a condition? That's really what this boils down to. And I will tell you that a lot of people would say, oh, being nice, that could change because you could be nice one minute and then mean the next. Well, that's not quite the right line of thinking. Being nice is a characteristic, in fact, because it's like you're a nice person. You are generally nice. There may be moments where you don't feel nice, but generally speaking, you are a nice person, and this would be considered a characteristic. Here are a few more quiz questions using the conjugations of the two verbs. So this time I do actually want you to conjugate this verb. And if you need to take a moment to think about how the correct answer, go ahead and pause the lesson at this point to give yourself time to figure out what the correct answer is. Okay, are you ready for me to show you the answer? Great. The answer is ella está enferma. Okay, being sick is a condition. It can change pretty quickly. So in this case, it's the subject is ella, so your correct conjugation is going to be under the estar verb chart, and it's going to be está. Ella está. Here's the second example. Again, if you need some time to figure out how you're going to respond, go ahead and pause the lesson now and press play when you're ready. In this example, we are describing ourselves, who we are. So in this case, we are using characteristics. So, nosotros somos jugadores de fútbol. This time the verb is ser because ser is used to communicate characteristics. Nosotros is the subject, and so the correct conjugation is nosotros somos jugadores de fútbol. Number 3, el partido, the game, blank en el estadio. Go ahead and pause the lesson if you need some time. Okay, let me give you the answer. Now let me give you the answer. The answer is es, because we are describing the location of an event. El partido es en el estadio. And finally, ellos blank simpáticos. All right, let me show you the answer. In this case, we're talking about some people who are nice, and they're generally speaking, they're going to be nice. They may have moments when they're not so nice, but these are nice people, and that's a characteristic. So, ellos son simpáticos. All right. The obvious pitfalls with these two verbs are that you may have a tendency to overuse the verb ser. It's the easier verb to conjugate, it's the easier verb to translate, and es, which is one of the main conjugations of ser, sounds really similar to the English word is. So in this example, where is the chair, we would have a new Spanish-speaking student would have a big temptation to say, ¿Dónde es la silla? Just because it's an easy translation. But that is in fact incorrect. Instead, you would want to say, ¿Dónde está la silla? Because we use estar for the location of non-events, so objects. The next pitfall is that of course, what we've talked about many, many times is confusing ser, or characteristics, with estar, or conditions. All right? The chair is broken. That is a condition. It's broken now, but in just a few moments, I might be able to fix it. So, la silla es rota. That's incorrect. You would want to say, la silla está rota. Let's spend a little bit more time diving into this common pitfall, characteristics versus conditions. All right, so on the left are the characteristics where we use ser. These are, again, more permanent and personal. They're part of somebody's nature. They're unlikely to change. And some examples are, if we have the sentence like él or ella, él es or ella es simpático, simpática. Él es amable. He's kind. Ella es maestra. She is a teacher. Él es desagradable. That's a great word. Él es desagradable. He's unpleasant. Generally, he is an unpleasant person. Ella es ciega. That means she is blind, okay? Blindness is a permanent characteristic. Él es de mente abierta. He is an open-minded person. And finally, ella es mi amiga. She is my friend. She's my friend now, and she's probably going to be my friend for a long time. Now let's talk about the state or condition and how we would use estar to communicate those. Remember, the state or condition it's less permanent. It's a temporary description that could change rather quickly. Él está lleno de mentiras. Try to say these along with me if you can. Él está lleno de mentiras. He is full of lies. Ella está en ruinas. Ella está en ruinas. This is like if you look at a building and it's dilapidated and it's unlivable, you could say something like, that building, that house, you really couldn't live in it. Its state or condition is such that you couldn't. But maybe with a little bit of investment of money and blood, sweat, and tears, you could build it back up again. Completa. Something being complete, like maybe you worked on that house and now it's complete. You would say, la casa está completa. Pintado. Pintado means to be painted. Rota, we've talked about this example. Something that's broken could be repaired. Reparado, this is something that is fixed. Okay, it's fixed today, but it could get broken tomorrow. And then finally, somebody is sad. So, él está triste. That means he is sad right now, but he could be happy in a few minutes. Let's jump into the speaking practice where I can actually ask you some questions in Spanish using these verbs ser and estar. ¿Eres tú bombero? ¿Eres tú bombero? Are you a fireman? Now, if you need some time to formulate your response, please pause the lesson, figure out how you're going to respond, and then respond out loud, and then unpause the lesson, and I'll give the correct answer. Sí, yo soy bombero. Sí, yo soy bombero. Yes, I am a fireman. ¿Son ellos soldados? ¿Son ellos soldados? Are they soldiers? Sí, ellos son soldados. Sí, ellos son soldados. ¿Sois vosotros policía? ¿Sois vosotros policía? No, nosotros no somos policía. No, nosotros no somos policía. ¿Soy yo de México? ¿Soy yo de México? Sí, usted es de México. Sí, usted es de México. ¿Somos nosotras de San Juan, Puerto Rico? ¿Somos nosotras de San Juan, Puerto Rico? Sí, nosotras somos de San Juan. Sí, nosotras somos de San Juan. ¿Es la fiesta en la calle? ¿Es la fiesta en la calle? Sí, la fiesta es en la calle. Sí, la fiesta es en la calle. ¿Son las 10? ¿Son las 10? Sí, son las 10. Sí, son las 10. ¿Está usted enfermo? ¿Está usted enfermo? Sí, yo estoy enfermo. Sí, yo estoy enfermo. ¿Estáis vosotras enfermas? ¿Estáis vosotras enfermas? Sí, nosotras estamos enfermas. Sí, nosotras estamos enfermas. ¿Están ustedes enfermas? ¿Están ustedes enfermas? No, nosotras no estamos enfermas. No, nosotras no estamos enfermas. ¿Eres tú loca? ¿Eres tú loca? Sí, soy loca. Sí, soy loca. ¿Estás tú en la escuela? ¿Estás tú en la escuela? Sí, yo estoy en la escuela. Sí, yo estoy en la escuela. ¿Cómo está ella después del accidente? ¿Cómo está ella después del accidente? Okay, the answer on this is going to be a little bit different than you're used to. Ella está bien. Ella está bien. ¿Está la escuela completa? ¿Está la escuela completa? Sí, la escuela está completa. Sí, la escuela está completa. Here's the comprehension exercise for this lesson. Go ahead and pause the lesson at this moment, read through this passage on the left, and then I will join you to go through it together. Are you ready to go through it together? Let's do so. Here is the translation into English, so let's talk about it. Nosotros somos, that means we are. Nosotros somos los médicos del hospital local. That's a really great sentence with lots of good vocabulary words. We are the doctors from the local hospital, del hospital local. Estamos aquí, we are here, para administrar unas vacunas. We are here to administer some vaccines a los niños que están enfermos, to sick children. A los niños means to the children. Que están enfermos means who are sick. Hoy es la primera de 3 pruebas. Today is the first of 3 trials que estamos administrando, that we are administering. Nuestras herramientas y medicinas son efectivas. Our tools and medicines are effective. But, como saben, this is a word that they use all the time in Spanish. Como saben. As you know is what that means. Como saben, as you know. Es necesario, it's necessary, documentar, to document, cualquier efectos, any negative, cualquier efectos Secundarios negativos. Any negative side effects. Por supuesto, of course. So por supuesto means of course. Siempre estamos dispuestos. Y disponible. We are always willing and available de hablar, to talk, to speak. Si means if. Si ustedes tienen preguntas, if you have questions. One quick note before we say goodbye to Lesson 9. Knowing the difference between characteristics and state or condition is really powerful because it allows you to say different things that are nearly identical in terms of what you actually say. This idea of being sick is a very good example. So you could say something like, yo estoy enfermo, or yo estoy enferma, and that is a state or a condition, meaning it's you're saying I'm physically not feeling well. But with a knowledge of ser and estar, you could say something like, yo soy enfermo, and that also works, but it communicates a different idea. It actually communicates that you are actually not well in the head. You're a little bit crazy, which is a more permanent characteristic than just not feeling well. So you could say something like, él está enfermo, he is sick, or él es enfermo, he is a little bit sick in the head, like he's crazy or he's not well as a person. And so knowing the difference between ser and estar, and specifically the characteristics versus the state or condition, can be really powerful as you expand your ability to speak Spanish. With that said, let's move on to Lesson 10.